they'll see the 15 seconds of quiet time too, you know.
Mm-hmm. I know how it works, but it's better than us in the middle of some conversation. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Thursday Night Jam with RCJesus and SASquatch from Scale Audio Solutions. See, we got a few people in here already. Hell yeah, thanks for showing up. We're going to talk about old stuff tonight. This car is probably one of the main reasons RC is as big as it is nowadays. It changed the game when it came out. But we'll just start off letting people get settled in and some other people join the views, get the chat going, bullshitting. Anyone that was here last night or last week and saw posts on the RCJesus page, the Florida Mini Z races were awesome. I see why people get into that. It's a lot of fun. I was just telling Chris, hopefully he can find someplace reasonably close. Doesn't sound like he can, but if he gets a chance to do it, if you're around a shop or a group that's doing Mini Z racing, I highly recommend it. They're not dirt cheap at $180, $200, but it is a ready to run. You just need some AAAs and do that front kingpin mod we did on the live video last week where you flop them over, and mine ran like a dream. I actually boosted up from the B main to the A main. Then I got smoked. Those guys in the A main world dudes that have been racing them, and once I got lapped by everybody once, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna stay way out of everybody's way and just have fun out here. I have no chance in hell of winning. But it was a good time. If you get a shot at doing it, I highly recommend it.
What did you find out about the steering on them? Was it messed up or is just the way
that is normal? And when you're driving them, it's fine.
Don't even notice. Yeah.
No, to win the B main, I figured out the way we did our track layout. If I hit about 1/3 to half throttle somewhere, I wasn't even hitting the brakes or adjusting the throttle. I just found that sweet spot, and I could just shoot, and never have to speed up or slow down. But then I was trying that with the A main guys, and that's my little trick didn't work for that shit. Maybe for consistent qualifiers and with noobs and stuff, but you actually got to use your throttle and haul ass on the straightaway and everything to beat those guys. But we had a good time. It was a small group, like 8 of us racing, but I kind of figured that for the first round. We had tons of people posting and sharing it on Facebook. You know, it looked like 20, 40 people were going to show up, but I also knew, well, a lot of people talk a big game. Yeah. And then it comes time to make the drive or do it or whatever. And never mind, you know. And there were some other races going on all over the place for Mini Zs and other stuff, over racing and stuff that day. So,
yeah.
But yeah, the Mini Zs were great. If you get a chance, do it. But what we're going to talk about, focus on tonight, is Team Associated. They did not put it in big enough letters on these old boxes, clearly. And the RC10, how this car came about, what the RC stands for in RC10, because it does not stand for radio or remote control. The difference between an Edinger and a Cadillac, what that means, the specific differences about it all, years that this stuff was around and came out, and just to give everybody a little background information, because really this was the first serious contender RC race car. People raced frogs, you know, they raced other stuff. Gosha had some stuff, but nothing. When this came out, it changed the game. Like, if you didn't have an RC10, you likely weren't going to win unless you're a really good driver. And how Losi came about, because of the RC10. It's only because of the RC10 that Losi's around. That's kind of a funny story. So we got some stuff to share tonight. If you guys have any questions, comments, anything you want to add, anything I missed because you're into this stuff, feel free to add it. You know, we're always about the chat and having fun there. So I guess an easy way to do it is to say, like, Chris, you know some of this stuff. So what's your gist on it?
With the Goldpans and everything?
Mm-hmm.
The gist on it. I don't know nearly as much.
What do you know? Yeah, obviously Team Associated makes it, but beyond that, what do you know about it?
Goldpans, I know you got the different versions with the plastics, you know, the white plastic, black plastic. Yeah, like we talked earlier, the 6-gear trans, and then the early 90s went to the stealth trans.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, they had a version with fiberglass shock towers too, didn't they? And then they went to the molded ones, or were they always?
You mean like this?
Yeah, but were they always fiberglass? They went to a molded one at one point, didn't they?
I can't think off the top of my head. It wasn't the B2. It was either the B3 or the B4, but I can't.
So it was that late
off
that
the
they
top of
got
my
into
head.
Yeah.
These were around late too, though. They had a black chassis later in life.
Yep, I remember the black one. Don't just too hard.
Yeah, I don't know. Must have been a typo. And what's up, Robert? Good to see you.
Yeah.
So how this started, we'll go with the basics, okay?
Yeah.
Team Associated started back in the day as a slot car company. It was 1965, I think. Roger Curtis, which is what the RC stands for, Roger Curtis 10, and Gene Hustings got together, and they were making, again, I haven't researched this stuff in 10 or 15 years, so I may miss some things or be a little off, but I'll do my best. I was going to do it today and ran out of time. Do a refresher. But anyways, Roger Curtis and Gene Hustings started Team Associated as slot car parts. And Mike Reedy back in the day started as slot cars, doing little slot car motors and all that stuff, because in the 60s, those were huge. And then in 71 they came out with the RC1, which I have one. We'll do it. I'll do a video or show on it one of these nights. It's a big 8-scale car, nitro on road. And it's straight up an oval piece of aluminum with some random parts that were machined and molded on. Very simple, including screws, 50 parts maybe, including the hardware. Like there's nothing to these old 70s cars. And so through the 70s, they were big in nitro because everything was 8-scale nitro for the most part back then. But they also, God, what year was it? I want to say it was 73 or 74 that the RC12E, should be the first one as I recall, came out. And that was a little 12-scale fan car, which I have all these, so we can go over all these as the years and weeks pass. But it's a little 12-scale pan car for carpet, because that got big. Electric, though, not nitro. The 8 scales, RC1, RC2, RC500, all that stuff, they were all 8-scale. The electric RC12s obviously stands for 12th scale, like the 10, and RC10 stands for 10th scale. So once they got out of slot cars, they got into RC cars. And then in the late 70s, early 80s, companies started to come out with dirt cars, Tamiya Kyosho, some other ones, companies that are no longer with us, that are long gone. And Associated jumped in that game. And I believe, pretty sure this is correct, Roger Curtis pretty much designed this whole thing. Hence why it's the Roger Curtis 10. I'm sure Gene had some assistance in it, but I know he was a lot of the business side and managing the race teams. And I think, extra marketing and advertising stuff and whatnot like that. So they decided to come out with a legit buggy. They went to an off-road show or car show or something there in California and saw a buggy that looked essentially just like this. And he's like, well, that's cool as shit. And they're racing those now. And we're in California. We should make a toy one, and go race and really kick ass in the races instead of bouncing around everywhere and out of control. So they developed the RC10. The very first ones will say Orca. If I can get the light not the way. Yeah, see how it says Orca right there? Mm-hmm. After Edinger, that will say Roar, because Orca was the Off-Road Radio Control Association, I believe is what that stood for.
Yeah, I raced West Coast. I raced Orca way back when.
Yeah, that's way when, because they were gone by like the 80, 85, 86.
Well, wasn't it? There was a version of it that was Norca, wasn't it?
There may have been. I can't remember.
I remember there was, in California when I raced at a place called Cyclart Racing in Fresno, California, and it was Norca. And then right after I got out of it, it went to Roar.
Yeah, okay.
So that would have been early 90s. Must have been early 90s.
Could have been. And that may have been a regional.
Possibly, yeah.
Something.
Well, I know I ran around with, not Kinwald, but I remember meeting Gil.
Jay Halsey. God, there's a whole bunch of names from back then.
I did run into
Hirosaka.
I ran into Kinwald one
Cliff
time.
Lett. Those are all guys from back in the day.
Yeah.
But so if it says Orc on the box, you know it's an Edinger right away. Another way to tell it's an Edinger is because, where in the hell is that? There it is. On the box, for the address. I probably won't be able to get you to see it, but it says Edinger right there. And you see that original AE logo right there?
Yeah.
That's actually a slot car track. If you look at it, it's designed to look like a slot car track. So that's two ways you know you have an Edinger. And what an Edinger means is that was their facility before they moved facilities. They've moved several times now at this point, 4 or 5, I think. But the ones made on Edinger Avenue were the very original ones for like the first year. These came out in 1984. And they were at Edinger till around 85, I believe. But just because an Edinger doesn't make it special. People freak out if you're in the know. I should check the comments about Edinger. But there's only certain Edingers that are special. Just because you get one in an Edinger box, it may be just the same. This is a classic, but it's the same as the Cadillac. It may have all the same stuff on it as a Cadillac. And what Cadillac means is that was their second street address. After moving from Edinger, they moved to Cadillac. So that's where those terms Edinger and Cadillac come from. Let me catch up here and see. Hey, what's up, Wayne? What's up, Bobby? Ranch in Southern. Are you talking about the Ranch pit stop, Wayne? Because we'll get into that too. That was Gil Losi's place. So, and thanks for stopping in, everybody. Good to see you. So the differences between an Edinger, if you know, are pretty easy to spot. But if you don't know, it's hard to spot. I brought this old thing home that I won in an eBay lot for 75 bucks. It came with an old Delta 12 scale pan car, a bunch of parts. Probably came with what would be $1,000 worth of stuff now, but it was 75 bucks 15 years ago. Because this is more of an old Edinger. And I can show you the differences in a minute, because even though this is an Edinger and it came out of that Edinger box, it is on the late end of Edingers. And I can explain what the difference is. So this doesn't have nearly the parts on it that would make it super valuable. So if you are a collector too, and it's new in box, this was new in box when I bought it, you're kind of just flipping a coin on what you're going to get. Because if no one's going to unseal it, right? So you can look at the parts, because that devalues it. So you just got to buy it and hope to God it's an early one. And unfortunately, I know of no ways via the box or anything else to tell whether it's an early, mid, or late Edinger. So keep that in mind. If you're ever getting these things, just because it says Edinger, if you can't see the parts inside, doesn't mean it's anything special. The box is cool. It has a little value because it's an Edinger box. But there's things like the anode color differences, the anodization. Hopefully it'll show up in the camera. This is an early Edinger. This is late. See the difference? This is much more orange like you're used to, and this is much more brown. Yeah. That's a big difference right there. Sometimes you'll get mixed match, like maybe this would have had an orange chassis with the more brownish gold nose plate, or vice versa, and things like that. But that's a big giveaway right there. It's the color of the anodization. This has the typical plastic. I can flex it with my thumb there, battery straps. This is early Edinger. It's G10. It's hard. It's fiberglass, same as these. This has captured spring pockets on the bottom. This has the ones everyone's used to that are open, that you can just pop off. And there is two later on, they did this, but these do not have the slots in them where you can just lift it up and pop it off the shock shaft. These, you have to take the whole rod end off the shock shaft and everything to get it apart. Other differences were the plastic. Sadly, this one's dyed, right? Which kills it. But again, I got it for nothing basically, so who cares? The plastic on these, this is hard white, right? There's no translucency to that. It's not opaque at all. It's solid. These old ones, if it weren't dyed, they're kind of opaque. They're translucent. You can see a little light to them if you hold them up to light. It was a little different plastic. God, there's a variance on the shock towers. I can't remember right now either. Pretty much all the Edingers, these both have it. It's probably easier to see on this. Came with sway bars. There you go. There is the sway bar end link. The bar is down in there, comes across. And I think all the Edingers had it, but the real late ones, they may have stopped with the sway bars. Cadillacs won't have come with the sway bars. Tires. The first tires, I don't have any. They're incredibly hard to find. If you're very, very early Edinger, these are big money. The tire will be a legit branded Goodyear tire on the outside. Very hard to find. And when you do, you better really want them. The front tires, original was a 9 rib for a very short time. So there's 9 ribs. Then they went to the 7 and then down to, I think it was what, 4. So if you got 9 rib tires, even the 7s are a little-ish rare as I recall. Again, this is all, I'm kind of digging through the back memory here of the file cabinet, bringing all this up. I haven't studied all this in a long time. But the 9 ribs are real hard to find. 7s are less common, but out there. Goodyear tires, almost impossible to find in the rear. The bodies. These bodies, I don't think I have the body in here. No, but I have an important part of it in here. This driver was not clear in a very early Edinger. Again, to tell you that this is late, mid, probably late. It was not clear Lexan, it was white plastic. So that's a giveaway too. The driver for in the cab is white. Geez, what else can I think of here? I know there's a shit ton more I'm missing. There's lots of little stuff.
Were the tires labeled Associated too, or just the Goodyear?
Just Goodyear. Later came Team Associated label ones.
So how do you know that they're Associated Goodyear tires?
Because you can tell they did them with Tamiya's too, I think, with the Goodyear, but they're a little different size and whatnot. If you know what you're looking at, you can tell.
And they were just knobbies, right?
Yeah, they were still like this. They were just regular big time knobs. But the Goodyear makes them worth coin. They all came, well, not all of them, but you can buy the kit several different ways. You have mechanical speed control right there. And the steering remained the same steering as far as I can remember the whole time.
Was there something different with
God, what else was it?
Wasn't there something different with the way the servo mounted, the steering servo mounted? The late ones had like the blocks and the early ones didn't, or something like that?
It might be vice versa, or you could be right. Again, I wish I'd had time to refresh my knowledge on all this stuff. Shock towers are different, as I recall, in the back end here. And in the front, they just had, I think, just one spot to put your shocks instead of multiples. The gear cover case, which is not on this one, is a little bit different on the early Edingers than it is on the rest of them. So there's lots of little stuff like that. And if you don't know what you're looking for, it could really, really short you some money, because you might think you're looking at a $1,500 car that's actually like a $600 car because it's missing all the important G10 bits and translucent plastics and wheels and tires and all that. These tires are actually really rare and hard to find too. So I was happy these came in the box. They're weirdo tires. I don't even know what tracks. They must have had them designed by the looks of them for tracks that were a little more packed down, less loamy. But you got your turnbuckles, twist-ons, wing nuts, essentially, is all they were, plastic wing nuts. What else? Shock anno color is obviously different too. And
so were they Associated was always producing everything in-house, right? They didn't outsource any of their molds or anything, did they?
back then they made most stuff in-house, not all of it. Companies like O'Donnell made things like shock bodies and whatnot.
Gotcha.
I think they had the chassis stamped and anode and then taken, but no, actually I think I'm wrong. They did the chassis too at first. They made everything, like as you can see on the old box, made in America. It was all made in the US, and I think like 90% of it was in-house. A fun story on, we'll get to how Roger developed the front suspension. There was no such thing as this kick up back in the day. And let me catch up on comments here real quick. Reedy may have done one, a 12 scale tether. Rob, I'm not sure. I never got into tether. Those were, Edinger should have had an A stamp on it too, but it may not have. I need my spectacles. Yeah, actually, you're right. That was one of the difference, I think, too. But that maybe there was inconsistency because people get confused about that too. No stamp chassis and double A stamp. What that comes down to was the dude tired? Was he hungover? Was he new at what he's doing? Because the double stamp comes from bang, and then they let it hop and hit twice. The no stamp it just got passed through. As far as I know, there's nothing particular with that. Although this later Edinger does have a very light A. You can barely see it stamped in there. This early does not. So some or all of the very earlies may not have had it. Yeah, 10 scale's always been the big one, Wayne. So anyways, back to the kick up. Roger was playing with this thing and trying to get the suspension to act how he wanted. So he literally, this is a story I heard from a buddy that works at Associated, and he just started driving it on the bench over his fingers like this with different kick ups, less flat to major and everywhere in between until he found the exact degree he liked. And that's how the kick up was developed, just by running the shit over fingers on the bench and watching how the suspension acted and the chassis responded. So this was real grassroots, right? There's no AutoCAD. And a lot of it was just trial and error and build shit and figure it out, which is pretty awesome. I think, it's nice how technical and perfect everything is, but the fact that these guys basically just pulled this out of their butt, so to speak, and came up with everything and made it work, and then for it to come out and dominate was badass. But Gil Losi was a big part of this too, because if you're not familiar with those old stories, Gil Losi owned a place that Wayne mentioned earlier called the Ranch Pit Stop. And it was a hobby shop and track, and it was a big deal in SoCal. A lot of guys raced there. They're responsible for a lot of the OG famous racers, a lot of car development. So the Losis helped them test this car as they were prototyping it, and that's where they ran, and they'd run when no one else was watching. It was quiet. They could go whatever, talk to Gil and go run. And they developed it like that, and Gil helped a lot. In fact, the RC10L pan car, the L stands for Losi. A lot of people don't know what the hell the L means, right? Because it doesn't really fit. You'd think RC10P for pan car or something. But the RC10L stands for Losi because if you're familiar with pan cars, they have what's called a T-plate. And that's what gives you your tweak and your suspension flex in the back that the motor pod and everything bolts to. And Gil Losi came up with that. So RC10L, because they used to work hand in hand like that together. They were buddies. Losi didn't have a company. He was busy running a hobby shop and races and stuff. Well, part of the deal was Losi was supposed to get, 3,500 or 5,000 or something. The first 3,500 or 5,000. Because they knew these things were just going to sell like fucking hotcakes. And they were on eternal back order for years. They'd come in, sold out on back order. Come in, sold out on back order. Because they just physically could not meet up with production that they needed. So Losi was supposed to get 3,500, 5,000, whatever it was, first shot. So he had the monopoly on them. So everyone that wanted an RC10 had to mail order it through him or go to the shop. Which, if he helped develop it, especially back with the way things work then, that seems fair. Seems a little crazy, but fair. And that did not work out. They started sending them to Great Plains, Tower Hobby, other hobby shops, stuff like that. They sent them to Losi, but Losi got so many. And then other people started getting them, and Gil's like, well, what the hell? I was supposed to get the first so many thousand, and now I don't have my order fulfilled, and other guys are getting these. So then that made an Associated Losi rivalry right there. That's where it starts, is right there. So essentially, Gil goes, fuck you guys. I'm going to make my own car. And that's where the Losi JR came from, with the trailing arms and all that, was out of that rivalry. And then Gil Losi Jr., of course, was coming up in a racer. So Gil Sr. had him to test and help run the car and develop it. And so it's not like some random rivalry that came apart just because they're always battling and winning. It's a legit rivalry between Associated pissed Gil off, and Gil said, fuck you, I'm going to make my own stuff. And now we have the giant Losi brand to come out of that.
Ferrari, Lamborghini.
Exactly. Very much like a Ferrari Lamborghini story. Oh, you're gonna leave me sitting in your office all day when I want to talk to you about your shitty clutches? Screw you. I build tractors. I can build crazy supercars. And people got to be careful about that. You got to be careful when you piss off, because lots of times it'll bite you in the ass. Henry Ford with the Dodge brothers, all classic things. The Dodge brothers built the engines and designed them and stuff, and the trannies and all that for the Model T. And the Dodge brothers wanted to keep making upgrades and making the cars better. And Henry's like, I want to keep it cheap, the same, and then we can keep making it cheaper and everyone can own one. And so the Dodge brothers got tired of it. And they said, well, we own 10% of the company no matter what, because they provide the capital. And so we're just going to go start our own shit, still make money off Ford. So a lot of those great rivalries and companies that come up are from just little deals where they were working together and split ways and got pissed at each other, and I'm going to do my own thing, and you create your own worst enemy. You got to be careful with that stuff. Yep, there you go, Robert. The L for Losi, correct.
Yeah. I knew about the RC10Ls, but I didn't know the L stand for Lucy either. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. God, I wish I could remember. Hold on, let me see here. I might have a list up where I can go through and make sure I'm not screwing up, because again, it's been so long. I actually put together the whole list of every car and part number and when it came out and everything Associated ever made. Took me hundreds of hours to make that spreadsheet, and Associated has it because they didn't have that information either. So I sent it to them years ago, but it's been 15 years. So, it's not that easy to remember all this stuff. Address in the box. We did that. We did the front of the Edinger. Okay. Apparently I forgot about that. Some of the very early Cadillacs may have had ORC on it, but that's incredibly rare.
Wow.
On the ends of the Cadillac boxes, this is printed, right? It's stamped on with a stamp on both ends with the part number and all that stuff. On the Cadillacs, it started to be glued on paper on the ends. So that's the difference I was forgetting. Let me get back to my cheat sheet here. Yeah, even some of the late Edingers had the printed labels with no extra ink stamp. The decals, they were not uncommon. They were in most all the kits. The tool that Associated gives you, I don't know where mine is, but it was a stamp tool for adjusting turnbuckles and nuts and stuff. That went from just plain stamped metal, whatever kind of metal it was, I can't remember, to a shinier version, a little smaller, and then they put the AE logo on it. So there were some changes in the tools, and it's very easy to spot. And yeah, I messed up. They were 7 ribs, not 9s. So the very earlies were the 7 ribs. And yeah, this is how you know it's mid, I believe, because these are the pro lines that I have on mine. Color of the chassis, we covered that. Darker gold. The shock towers on the early to mid Edinger are a different type of G10, and they're a little thicker and are milled. So the other ones are stamped, not milled, and there's a little different to the way they laid the G10. And the stamping makes the edges kind of look sanded. Yeah, these are definitely stamped. These, I think, were milled. And fortunately, since it's dyed, and they're a little thicker, I think. Since it's dyed, I can't tell a lot of that stuff on that one that I just got in a lot by chance. I actually didn't even know what the hell that thing was when I got it way back in the day, because I was still learning all this stuff. Shot cap gaskets are smaller on the early Edingers. Yep. The early Edinger chassis, the very early ones, did have no stamp, but it wasn't long after that they came A stamped. And then at one point you'd get AB, but that's much later on. That's right. That's something I don't have the wing for this. It's at the shop, but the wing buttons are, the early wing buttons are diamond shaped like these right here. And The later ones went to a teardrop shape. So that's a way to tell. I already talked about the clear driver versus the non-clear driver. Front spring caps did not have a slot cut over the stock shaft. Exactly. We just covered that. Front spindles had more material on the later cars to give more strength. I had totally forgotten about that one. They did beef them up. Is there a difference in these? Nope, those are both earlier ones on these cars because that. Oh yeah, that's much beefier. Unfortunately, there's no way I can show you, but where the arm comes off the block to hook to the tie rod, it's a lot wider for more beef. They were narrower on the early ones. The G10 battery strap I covered. Bell crank is the same on both, yeah, but the ball cups are totally round and don't have the hex on the early Edinger stuff. This, I think, still has the round too. Yes, these are still round, which putting these old turnbuckles together, because they're just straight threaded round with no hex. People bitch about modern ones. Those suck ass. Worst part of building the kit right there. Yeah, the early covers were real thin. They broke easily. They came thicker later on, but there was also a difference in the shape. The later ones are bigger, whereas the earlier ones kind of fit right as they have to over the pinion. The later ones kind of go out bigger around the motor screws and all that stuff. So that's how you can tell those apart. And I think, yeah, there's differences in the shock pistons and whatnot. They have a slot in the sides instead of the two little holes in them. But obviously I can't show you those here. There is a difference there though. And early front tires was no Goodyear. So I think that covers most everything. So I remember most of it, but there were a few things I forgot. Yeah, the thicker and milling. So yeah, that covers most of that stuff. If you're going to look for something like this, what you're going to look for. Do you guys have any questions about this stuff, or do you, Chris?
Does that 6-gear trans have a ball diff in it? Really?
Kind of, because the diff, you probably think that's a spur, right?
Yeah, it has the balls in the spur gear.
That is not a spur. That is not, or a slipper. I mean,
yeah,
this is not a slipper. This is your diff.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah,
and this is how you tune your diff right here.
Yeah,
it wasn't until the the Stealth, which is a 3-gear transmission, that all of you know from everything from a Traxxas Rustler, Bandit, or Stampede to an Axial SCX10 or an Element tranny. Any 3-gear transmission like that actually came from pretty much Tamiya, really, but then Associated perfected it in 91, and everyone just ran with it because they could, right? Yeah. Anything else, anybody?
Yeah, I forgot about that. As soon as you said spur gear, I remembered. I'm like, oh, that's right. It's got a ball dip in the spur. It doesn't have a slipper.
Yep, no slipper. But quite frankly, we didn't really need a slipper back then because you were running 2 to 4 minutes and you didn't have that much power.
Yeah, you didn't have enough
power. Just brush motors on NiCads, 30 miles an hour, 35 maybe, and you didn't want to gear it to too much torque or too much power. You geared so that you could go as fast as you could without running out of battery before the last lap. So you'd go out there and go, okay, I got 3.5 minutes. So, and this race is 4. So I need to gear down, right? So that I can get a little more torque and a little less high end amp suckage so I can make it that extra 30 seconds. And there was a lot of tuning back then. There still is now. The cars are way more tunable now, but you tuned to like so that your battery was dead as soon as you crossed.
It was just like a different kind of tuning.
Yeah.
You know, like
we're dealing with a lot simpler, more basic stuff, you know.
Match cell packs and making sure your air gap in your motor was good and your brushes were cut nice.
Yep. And this has the Team Associated motor in it. Nice. You can't really see the label, but it's got a blue label. They made a pop-up one that had a green label.
Yep.
And you, like I said, you could get these in multiples of ways of just the kit with bearings, without bearings. Back in these days, if you had bearings in your shit, you were a baller. because the bearing kits cost more than the car kit. Bearings were obscene in the 80s.
Well, I remember upgrading the bearings in my 10T. My original 10T had bearing. I upgraded the bearings, and I remember it was like $80 to do bearings.
Yeah, it was expensive by 91, 92 when the
expensive.
10T was out, but nothing like the 80s.
Yeah.
And then people now bitch about, oh man, I got to pay $40 for this bearing kit. I'm like, bro, it was like $270 in 80s money for a bearing kit back in the day.
Did the 10s always came with mechanical ESCs, right? They didn't do electronics till after the 10 had already been replaced, right?
I don't think you could get an ESC with any of the Goldpans now.
Yeah. Did they always do the slide ESCs, or did they ever do rotary and associate, or was that just a Tamiya?
I only ever saw the slide style, and that was the better style than the Tamiya one, anyways.
Yeah,
The
Tamiya
one's melting down all the time.
Yeah. And it's funny because those play in the slot cars too, because I do 24 scale slot cars also, and it's
the same. So there you go. We still use those same slide ESC or in the really and the MSC mechanical speed control MSCs.
Yeah. So we still use that same slide. I know the fancier controllers have solid state and all that, but the basic level, like get kids started, get into it, or get into it for a while.
Still using an MSC, huh?
It's the same thing. It's identical. There's just in the controller, there's a metal slide, and
the servo to control it back in the day actually went in what most of us know as the battery box back here. Yep. That's why you ran sideways. But you'll see on this one, you could always, it's lengthwise. Yep. And this is the more common way to do it. It's better for balance, all that stuff. It's the better way to do it. But that's why they came sideways, because that battery pocket in the shock tower was actually battery pocket / servo pocket.
Yeah. So those ESCs, I wonder if those mechanicals, I mean, they took that basically probably straight from slot cars, since they did slot cars first.
I'm sure, yeah.
And they just
I don't know who made these. I believe Parma made them at one point, or maybe they were just buying.
They still do. Parma still makes it.
Yeah.
Parma still does a lot of slot car stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, they do different ohm ones, and then they have all the heat sinks and the everything.
Yep. Oh yeah, batteries were so quick back in the day. It sucked.
Yeah, good old NiCads.
Yeah. Yeah, I still have a light bulb string.
Yeah.
I haven't used it in a few years now, but I keep it around because once in a while I still find a use for that thing. I've even been a crazy man and used it quickly for lipo uses before, but I do not advise that, because if you fuck up, it's going to be a bad day. You got to be on point with that. It's like when you're bringing a lipo with too low a cell back on nickel metal, you got to sit right there and watch it. As soon as the sign up, stop, back to lithium mode, Don't try that stuff at home. If you burn your house down, it's not on me.
Yeah, I remember having the ice chest. We charge them in the ice chest, and then we get done running, throw them straight on the batteries till the battery or the lights.
Yep.
And once they're on, the lights are dead, we throw it back in the ice chest.
Yeah, because NiCads had what's called memory. Like most people running RCs have no idea about it. And the nickel metals had it somewhat, but not that bad. But NiCad memory was bad. If you drained it halfway, recharge it all the way, or if you drained it all the way and recharged it halfway, that battery would remember that, and it was forever compromised. Your capacity went from a 1200 SCR to like an 800.
Well, nickel metals were like
different. Remembered.
Nickel metals didn't like to be discharged all the way. Piss them off.
Yeah, you wanted to go to 0.9 volts.
Yeah, nickel metals, you don't want to drain them all the way. Nickel metals didn't like being pulled. They were like opposite of NiCad. It was crazy.
But they were a lot easier to deal with.
Oh man, you could beat the shit out of them, leave them sit for a year. They didn't care. They just work.
Well, NiCads are actually real good for that. Better than nickel metals. You can take, like, if you find an old battery pack new in box from 35 years ago, you can bring that thing back to life and they'll run just like new. Nickel metals, when they've sat in a box like that for years, you can't really bring them back. But they will take a lot more abuse. And the memory issue was a big thing. I screwed up a couple batteries when I was a little kid before I learned that.
Well,
I'd get impatient, right? And be like, fuck it, it's charged enough, and take it off. And
well, I know capacity was a big one too, because nickel metals, you go up to 5,000 milliamps on a cell. For NiCads, we were, I want to say we capped out at like 2,600 on NICADs or something
Oh,
like that.
geez, I remember the biggest I think I can remember for NICAD was 16.
I remember seeing 18s for NICAD.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't think it ever went over 2,000 because that was another big thing with nickel metals. Is like, wow, 5,000 milliamp pack. Holy crap, we could run forever. You know.
Oh yeah, I was blown away. I can run for 19 and a half minutes. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. 2 batteries and I'm cycling them. I can run for like 2-3 hours. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I remember that. Just
2400 RC10 Talk says.
What was that?
2400 RC10 Talk is saying, which
remember
that should be Jason. What's up, Jason? I see Mark's in now. Jason is still, he runs RC10 Talk. If this is Jason, I'm pretty sure it is. And he's been balls deep in these things nonstop. So Jason knows everything I know, I'm sure, and probably even more, but he keeps it fresh in his head. So if you got anything you want to add, Jason, I don't know how long you've been in here. I think I covered most of it, but you may think of some things I forgot.
That's him, he says.
Yep. Good to see Jason. I raced with him at Vonats. I got the Vonats Classic right here. So Jason's good people, and he's a hell of a builder with all these old RC10s, man. He comes up with some crazy shit and then goes and runs the hell out of it at Vonats. I love it. Mark, yeah, happy birthday. He was a Benihana. We have those in the Orlando area? I didn't even know that.
Where is Vonats?
If you got Vonats is Vintage Off-Road Nationals.
Where though? Where is it?
It's Connecticut now, right? Or is it Massachusetts? No, it used to be Connecticut. Now it's Massachusetts. It's up there in the
East Coast, though, Northeast Coast. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. I drive. I only knew about Kobe on I drive. We're going there to Kobe for Cadence's birthday because she loves that. She is definitely my daughter. Always, I want the steak. Give me the fillet. I taught her to eat well Saturday because
the Arma mug there. Shameless
plug. Shameless plug for Arma. And if you're into any of this stuff, there's the RC10 Talk forum, which Jason runs. Yeah, it's Fitchburg, Massachusetts nowadays. It used to be Connecticut, and then they switched to Fitchburg, I think, I don't know, 5-8 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. But the shirt I have on is Old School RC on Facebook. That's a Facebook page strictly about all this old shit from the 70s, 80s, 90s. I'd say most of it's mid 80s to late 90s on there. RC10 Talk is strictly about RC10 associated stuff. And they've got old, since the forum, there's also a Facebook page, RC10 Talk, but there's the forum. And you can go back and research posts that were made 10, 15 years ago, whatever, and find what you need, unlike in a Facebook group, right? You can do that on a Facebook group, it's a pain in the ass. And there's a ton of valuable information on RC10 Talk forum. But RC10 Talk and Old School RC are both great resources on Facebook. A lot of us middle-aged guys that have been running these things for decades on there. So we get a lot of noobs. Hey, I just picked this up. Did I get a good deal? What do I need to do? Can I run brushless in this? You know, how does this work? And that's the thing, like no one's gonna run an early Edinger unless it's already been run and used at Vonats. But the Vonats, you're gonna see some cool shit. We have a gallery, and last year I got 2 trophies on that one. Best of show, and they're up there. I don't have them standing up. It was best of show and most accurate to vintage or whatever, something like that. That's 3rd place in the B main. Whoop whoop. Concourse best in show. Concourse most authentic. So I took the Kinwald and the MIP cable drive and won with those. And there's guys that have brought nitro conversions and crazy old rare stuff you don't see. You get to see there a lot. Yeah, Jason remembered. Authentic. And we just run the hell out of them, and it's a blast. There's guys that run them like in the classic. You have to run a stock low CJR or a stock RC10. You can use a re classic like I do because Associated was true and faithful on that re-release of the classic to the original. But unlike Tamiya, they didn't screw all the collectors, because every single part but one or two on the classic has a small difference. Like I think on the classic, they're stamped left and right on the arm, an L and an R, and they're not on the original. So if you look at them, you can instantly tell these are re-release, not original. So you can still keep track of what's original and what's a re-release or a clone and know the difference, you know, and this isn't actually a $1,200 car. This is a $400 car, you know.
So besides Tamiya, who else was competing with the RC10s?
Jason would probably know better at this than I. From the best I remember in the 80s and early 90s, it really did come down to Losi and Associated. It was always back and forth between them.
Well, before Losi, though,
Kyosho has always been pretty solid. I think they were always doing
I always
pretty
forget
well.
about Kyosho.
Yeah. Tamiya never really made anything. That they had the Stadium Blitzer that people raced in the stadium truck class and stuff, but Tamiya never really made any competitive race kits that I can think of back in those days. They do now with TRF stuff. If you ever build a Tamiya TRF kit, that's probably the most high-end, perfectly, flawlessly produced kit you'll ever build. They're a pleasure to build. I only own one TRF. It's a TA05 Drift or something like that. But the aluminum and the carbon parts and all the molded plastic are just flawless. The kits are so smooth and so perfect.
So before Losi, though, what was RC10 going against?
Tamiyas and shit like that, frogs and stuff. That's why they just kicked everybody's ass.
Because like you said, Kyosho was around, but I don't think Kyosho.
They didn't have anything at first.
They were just doing Tamiya stuff, like Tamiya. They were just another Tamiya.
I think the SRB, I think, was a popular one for racing. Tamiya SRB.
Okay.
And I think frogs were pretty popular back then. I never got to race back in those days, so I just have to go by. And of course, there was no internet to watch it, so I'm just going by what I remember in RC car action.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was mostly Tamiya stuff, I think, and you know, frog was a popular one. I think the SRB. And
I just can't wrap my brain around a frog being competitive on a track at any level.
I actually, Dana, like I said, Dana was thrilled this year because he beat me with the frog with my RC10 after I got hacked in the first lap. Catch up. If you can drive them, you know, a lot of it still come down to the driver.
I've driven a frog.
I've never driven a frog.
I've driven a frog. I was not. I've driven an RC10. I've driven a frog, and I don't know how the heck.
Yeah. Well, in the frogs, they had a lot of hop-up parts. MIP made stuff for SRBs, I think, and frogs, and there was a lot of companies. And actually, hopefully, fingers crossed, I probably shouldn't tease this because it probably won't happen, but I don't know. Sometimes I can smooth talk people into shit. I emailed Eustace today, Eustace Moore from MIP. He's the one that started MIP. MIP stands for Moore's Ideal Products.
Yeah, Moore's Ideal Products.
Yeah. And he's been balls deep in RC since the late 70s, I think. Still is, right? And I've been trying to find information on my RC10 custom 4x kit, which MIP made, which was the cable drive.
Oh, yeah.
Which was around for like a year and a half or something. But you cannot, at least I've searched a lot of hours over the years. I can't find any PDF manuals. I can't find any PDFs with the advertisements for it. I can't find exact dates. It's hard to even find what they called the kit because everyone instantly goes to the SP2, which was the chain drive. So I emailed Eustace today with a picture of it. And I'm like, hey, do you think you guys might have PDFs or could take pictures of the original ads and manuals and stuff and send them to me? And hey, by the way, Eustace, we'd love to have you on a live show I do on Thursday nights with a buddy. And we can talk about this and you can fill everybody in on your history with MIP and fill us in on all those conversions and all that stuff. So we'll see. He's probably not going to be interested in going on the live show, but Eustace is a good guy, so I imagine he will probably be able to dig up and give me the information. I should have emailed him years ago. Cox Scorpion. That was one too. That's right. I forgot about the old Coxes.
Ooh, yeah. I always
Yeah.
forget about Cox too.
That's a good one, Robert. Yeah, everyone forgets about Cox.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Must not have been very forget if she forgot about it.
Yeah, Mark, it would be awesome if we can get Eustace on here. We'll see. That's a pretty big ask. He's a busy guy. He's an older guy, so I don't know how much he's into this kind of technology and stuff. But
that's a good one, Mark. Yeah. What about Schumacher? Schumacher came in later though, didn't they?
Schumacher, I think, started late 80s, but they're English. So, I mean, I didn't really see much of them in car action that I remember and stuff from back in the day.
I remember seeing Schumachers though in the early 90s when I was getting into it with RC10Ts.
Yeah, by the 90s for sure.
Every once in a while you'd see a Schumacher, you're like, what the hell is that? And Schumacher. Oh, okay.
They were big in this area for a long time because their US facility, when they had one, they don't anymore to the best of my knowledge, was based either in Tampa or Miami, I think.
Okay.
So they were kind of local, right, to Florida.
Yeah.
And Schumacher is still very popular at Beachline Raceway. They still sell and run a lot of Schumacher there. It's still a pretty big brand in Florida. I don't see a lot of it elsewhere, but I think, you know, it's still just a hangover from when they were here. People still love Schumacher. I've never driven a Schumacher. Ha, Juicebox, he got you right away. He said balls. First comment. You're late, buddy. They were 88 to 90. Started showing up in the New York area. Yeah, the Cougar is, and that the Cougar I think is still around basically in just a modern form. But there's this stuff goes back so deep. Like I just love the fact still when I got told this by Brad at Associate, I laughed my ass off when he's like, "Yeah, Roger designed the kick up just by running it over his fingers and seeing which kick up designed best." Like that's just crazy shit to me, you know. And everyone since has run with a kick up, you know, of about the same degree because he got it right. Pretty impressive. I was supposed to meet Roger and get to hang out with him in 2020 when I was going out for Proline. And then, of course, Divock 91 Divock happened and that got canceled and it just hasn't happened yet. Maybe next year, if I get lucky, I'll be able to meet him and BS with him and show him some of the collection. That would be a pleasure. I'm not one to really get starstruck by anybody, you know, celebrities, whatever. Hey, what's up? How's it going? You're just a person. But like Eustace or Roger or Gene, had he not passed away, Kinwald, had he not passed away, guys like that, if I meet them, I'm going to geek out a little bit because it's like, holy shit, you guys literally like molded my whole fucking life and you don't even know it, you know? If you guys not done the shit you did, I wouldn't be doing what I've been doing forever, you know?
Well, I remember when I met Gil, but I was so young, I had no idea who the guy was.
Yeah.
I remember everybody making a big deal about him being there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he designed that car and that car," you know. And I was like, "Oh, okay, the guy that made that car, that's cool." And I mean, I was like 12, I think.
Yeah.
So, but I remember him being there whenever he was racing.
LOL, sorry, working in the shop. Juicebox says, "How dare you work?" He's got some fun stuff going on right now too. He just got himself a new associate in an SR10 because he's been building an oval track. So now he's got his oval car to go around.
Nice.
Juicebox works for Big Squid, so he does a lot of reviews and articles and stuff for them.
I'm saving my pennies to get a 4-wheel drive associated buggy soon. So
who is?
Me.
You are?
Yeah, there's a shop about 2.5 hours away. I might try to start going to in the summer on the weekends and running.
Nice.
Yeah, I miss it. I miss racing so bad. It's what makes always been hard to get me in the RC. And it's like get into it and I'll build stuff, but then I don't ever fuck with it because I just want to go on a track.
Yeah. And it was like with buggies and stuff like that, like if you're not on a track, they're really not that fun.
No, yeah.
Got a stadium truck or a short course or a buggy, the track is where it's at.
Yeah.
If you're lucky to have land and have your own personal track, which I did for a couple of years, it's amazing. I was out probably 20 hours a week driving RC cars. It was wonderful.
Yeah, we have a spot that our county, the local county, donated. It's at a sports complex, and they actually donated like a couple acres for an RC car track. And
Oh, that's plenty of room. Hell yeah.
Well, they came out and they built the driver's stand, and they got water out there, and they got some piping, but nobody ever maintains it. Nobody wants to work on it.
Yeah.
So I go out there on a weekend and it's just packed down. It's not groomed. It's dry as a bone. We have shit dirt around here anyway. It's like sand.
Yeah.
It sucks because I want to go run on it, but I don't have the time to go maintain it, and nobody else does it. So it's just kind of, it sucks.
It is a lot of work, man. When I had the track at the farm and we were on it, I was out there with the weed whip and weed killer and all that stuff, like a couple days a week, staying on top of it for a few hours at a time. And again, back in these days when these were running, tracks were mostly run by clubs, you know.
Yeah.
So you had 30, 40, 50 guys deep. All right, we're gonna have a track maintenance day. Well, shit, you get 10, 20 guys out there, you can do a ton of work in 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
Now they're either public and they're just, well, it's here, but it's gonna be rough, or it's private, you know, and someone's trying to make a living off it and they have to do all the crazy amount of work on their own.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I raced down in California, the way they did it is we would race Sunday, and if you came out and helped work on track on Saturday, you had basically half off your entry fees on Sunday. That's how they did it.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
I always go out Saturday, and then if you went and maintenance the track on Saturday, you would get practice time. You get track time for free. So so you get an
advantage before the race,
and you get to drive it in. So I mean, I lived like 4 blocks away, so I would pedal my little bike over there on a Saturday and help groom and water and tilt the track, get it ready, and then I had my car on my backpack and I'd throw a few batteries through it. And then Sunday I was hot and ready to go. I was fresh. So
yep. Yeah. Well, and if you were pedaling a bike, you still had tons of energy. All right. Later, Jason. Thanks for stopping in, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had more time in my life right now, I'd probably try to start getting something going at that track here in town and get a club going. And like, I know what it takes and what it would take to do it. And that.
Well, we're in the season of our lives with kids and stuff that's like another 5-10 years. We'll have time for that shit again.
Yeah. And I mean, I do all kinds of shit with my school and teaching. So that extra stuff keeps me so busy anyway. So
yeah, because you did a cool STEM program with them and all that.
Yeah, and our season's short up here too. Like, fuck, we're middle of April right now, and I just had marble inch hail yesterday, and we still have ice on the ground. So it's like we couldn't even groom the track right now. Still. Yeah.
This is like 80 today or something.
So fucking tired of the snow and the ice right now, man. You don't even know it.
It's the worst, man. I do not miss living in that
I'm scraping my windshield off this morning. I was fucking sick of it, man.
Well, and the worst is like the mornings when it starts out like 20-30, and then by the afternoon it's like 65. Yeah, like, well, this is glorious, but now I dressed for 20-30 degrees. I'm sweating my balls off, and I'm not used to it.
I would still take that. I would still take, because right now we're hitting 40, 45 during the day. It sucks. So
yeah,
I don't mind the 45-degree weather. It's when it's freezing in the morning. I'm sick of that shit, man.
You gotta warm your car up. Yeah.
Yep. Sucks.
Don't miss it.
Yeah. Usually we're pretty good. Now, usually right now we're like high, like low mid 40s in the morning and like 60s in the day. This time of the year, usually, but not right now. Sucks.
Well, it's tornadoes and flooding in southern Florida, but
yeah, I'd rather take this over that.
That's why I don't live in southern Florida. Southern Florida, like I said earlier, southern Florida is a whole nother state.
You guys have your hurricanes. Have fun with your hurricanes.
That's okay. They warn us about hurricanes.
The only thing here that we could have is volcanoes. If they wanted to wake up, we'd be
and tsunamis, but you're in the high desert, so you don't have
I'm
to
at 3,400 feet. I'm not going to get a tsunami.
All the coastal people that get wiped out then.
Yeah, the mountains will protect us.
Yeah.
They have what they call it, the Cascadia event is what they call it.
Yeah.
If that happens, we're fine. They're fucked.
We just buy beer for hurricanes. Yeah, sadly, I say this, sadly, we don't really get hurricanes anymore unless you're on the coast.
Yeah.
We don't get them very often, number one. I mean, Hurricanes are way more frequent and more deadly. Well, then how come Florida's gotten like the least of them in the last 20 years than it ever has?
Yeah.
And when we do, they're pretty weak. Now, like last time through, I can't even remember the name, but yeah, if you were on the southeast, you got fucked up. Like south of Naples and stuff, Sanibel Island, they literally wiped out, just leveled. But again, you've got at least 24 hours, 2 days notice, usually, if not a week, to pack your shit and store it and protect it and get the fuck out. Yeah. But by the time it's to Central Florida, it's just like, oh, it's not much worse than a hardcore Midwest thunderstorm, you know?
Yeah, so the biggest town on this side of the mountains in Oregon is Bend, which is about 15 minutes south of me. And the whole town's basically built on top of lava tubes. And if the volcanoes ever get pissy again, that whole town is so fucked.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're gonna be fucked too. There's gonna be so much ash and shit. It's gonna be a mess. But that's the only thing we really have to worry about. There's just like 5 volcanoes right there. I can see them.
That's what people forget about. They're like, well, I'm like 100 miles away. And I'm like, yeah, but you're the direction the wind blows. So you can still get
we're closer than that.
We ash dumped on you.
I can be in the mountains in 20 minutes from here. So they're right there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're getting feet of ash if something happens.
Yep.
You'd be digging out like a snowstorm.
Eugene's the other side of the mountain from me, Mark. About 3 hours from me. Straight west for me is Eugene.
So was Pompeii. Yeah, well, Pompeii got blasted by the pyroclastic flow first. I don't think he's close enough for that.
Well,
if you're getting caught, a pyroclastic flow isn't that bad, right? Like all of a sudden you just see this wall of 2,000-degree gas and rubble coming at you, and you're like, fuck, and then you're like, it's going like 700 miles an hour.
So, Crater Lake, right?
Yep.
The Crater Lake is what they say. It blew up like St. Helens, but it was like 5 times bigger than St. Helens. Because it was a mountain. It was supposed to be the biggest mountain on the West Coast when it blew. And then
until it became a hole.
Right. And then about 45 minutes south of me is a place called Newberry Caldera, which is bigger than that. It's huge. There's 2 lakes. There's 2 lakes in the crater that used to be the mountain. There's 2 lakes in the crater.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest obsidian flow in the world. You can actually walk up and walk through a giant chunk of obsidian. I mean, it's hard to comprehend. It's a giant fucking chunk of obsidian that's like,
yeah,
almost as far as I can see. It's like miles of obsidian. It's nuts. And you walk through it. There's paths through the obsidian.
Amount of obsidian.
It's insane. So that's that same place. So there was some hardcore volcanic shit that went down around here. So
well, that's not part of the Yellowstone supervolcano, is it? It's too far north.
No, it's not. That's what
I mean, it's part of it in the Ring of Fire, but it's not.
Yeah, we're in the Ring of Fire for sure. I mean, I can see 7 mountains of the Ring of Fire out my window. So
yeah,
7 volcanoes. They're at mountains, but they're dormant volcanoes.
Yeah.
So,
for now, until they melt
St.
Helens your ass.
Right. So yeah, it's pretty wild. There's what's called the lava flow. It goes from Newberry Caldera all the way to the coast. There's a flow of lava.
Yeah.
You go up in the mountains and stuff. You drive through it a few times where you're like going for a couple miles and it's just lava rock on each side of you. And it goes from the caldera all the way to the coast, hundreds of miles of lava.
Yeah, just pumice, right? Everywhere.
Yeah. If you go on Google Maps, you can just watch it. It just goes all the way to the ocean. Wild.
And what sucks is the next time it goes off, it might go a totally different way.
Oh,
you can't be like, well, if I'm not in that direction, I'm safe. No, I might go the whole other way.
It's literally the only thing I think about. I'm like, God, if those volcanoes wake up, we're so fucked.
Well, again, though, with the volcano, generally, you're going to get at least like a week's worth of time of earthquakes and stuff, if not several months.
Oh yeah, there's sensors on all of them. So like we have what's called 3 sisters. There's north, south, and north, middle, south sister.
I've heard of them. Yep.
South sister has a pretty big bulge on it. It's been, but it's not.
Oh, really?
Doing a lot, but there's a big bulge on South Sister, and then
that's how St. Helens started.
Yeah, and it's been there
several feet or whatever, and then
yeah, poof. I mean, people basically hike up to it. It's been there for a long time.
Yeah,
and then Newberry's always making noise and doing shit, but there's like, I mean, we have hot springs everywhere. I mean, you go.
Oh yeah, you got hot ass shit under you everywhere.
Yeah.
I just have to dodge stray bullets from Chicago, Robs. That's much safer than hurricanes or volcanoes. Blow out the side.
That's a whole other.
We always end up just off on a complete fucking random tangent too. Like we're talking about hurricanes and volcanoes and shit. Right. But that's all right.
Yeah, earthquakes. That comes with the volcanoes too.
Yeah, I've never been in an earthquake that I could really feel. I've been in earthquakes before, but very minor. Yeah, never around a volcano. Can't say I'm into either one.
Earthquakes are fucking weird. Like it makes you feel weird. Because I was in California, I mean, we got San Andreas, so I mean,
yeah,
when it starts talking, everybody feels it. And
yeah,
I remember the first time I was standing there, and I was a kid, and I was like, God, I feel weird. Like I feel like I'm moving, and then I noticed the chandelier in our house was moving, and like,
oh, I am moving.
Weird fucking feeling because the ground's moving, like everything underneath you is moving. It's the weirdest feeling.
All I've done is an earthquake simulator where it was like a 6 or 7 or something. Mm-hmm. And stood on it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is fucked up. It's not for me."
It's different in a sim though. Like when you're standing in your house.
Yeah.
It's
because on the sim you're expecting it to do it.
Yes.
When you're in your house and you're moving around, like what the fuck, water? I see the videos of like water splashing out of people's pools and shit, and I'm like, that's crazy.
It's nuts, man. Looks with your
Although
head.
In Florida, the ground could just open up beneath me right now.
Yeah, you guys got
like
the whole
right now. In 2 seconds, you all can just see me falling 180 feet into the earth.
Well, you know,
like, damn, he's getting really good with his technology. Look at that CGI shit he just pulled. Nah, RCJesus is dead.
We actually
have to watch it live.
Here. We get that here because of the lava tubes under the ground.
Oh, that would make sense.
That happens, yeah. We've had a buddy of mine, a friend of mine. Her dad was building they were building a house, and they're digging for the foundation, and they ran into a lava tube, and so it was cool though. So what they did is they rebuilt the foundation for they made a basement, and they put a false wall in the basement, and there was a door. If you went through the door, you can go behind the wall, and it was a cave. I mean, basically it was a private, like 100 yards deep, and we used to party down there.
Hell yeah, dude,
it was awesome. We'd go down there, we'd go through the false wall, and we'd like 7 of us would go down there. We'd be drinking and just hanging out. It was fucking rad.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome. Like that right there, even if it's a 1,200 square foot house, it's worth like $1 million.
Yeah.
It has a fucking secret cave, bro. You're like a super villain.
Yeah, you go, and it was cool. They wired it all, so they had lights behind the wall in the false wall. And then you would go back there, and then they had about 5 or 6 strings of lights running down into the lava tube, the cave. And we had chairs in there and a table, and just
I had a TV,
blast the music,
table and shit in there, foosball. Yeah.
Oh, we had all kinds of crazy shit in there. We just party and have fun, and the parents didn't care. They're like, "You're not going to hurt anything. It's a fucking cave." So, yeah, those good times.
Well, I guess we're after 10. And we've been off on a tangent of bullshit as usual, but it's often the most fun part for the last 15 minutes. Should we call it?
Yeah, I'm good. I gotta get some dinner going for my children.
Yeah, I got to make sure the kid is asleep and all that good stuff. All right. Well, everybody, have a wonderful evening. We will see you next Thursday. Next Thursday is 420. Wink, wink. So it might be a little hard to see me. There might be a small flare in here. But we're going to have Chris Lindgren on from Beat the Creek. And he's going to go over all the rules, what the events, when you can come in, when you can go out, how it all goes down. So if you're into Beat the Creek, curious about going, want to know what's up, haven't been, or just want to give all of us shit in the comments, be here next week. We'll be BTC week. But with that, I think we're covered. So again, peace out. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Later.